Okay, hello friends. Welcome to this video where I thought I would just basically go through every step in my makeup routine and explain what I'm doing and why I'm doing it. I initially got the inspiration for this video because my sister visited me like a little bit ago, and she's like really just kind of starting to get into makeup. She didn't wear it like it at all before, and because I've like been interested in makeup and like doing makeup for like so long, and like consuming makeup content and stuff, I don't even really like think about certain things that I do, but I thought it could just be like nice to do like a pretty simple look. This is kind of just like the general steps I do when I'm just like doing my makeup just for like life, you know, and just like explain what I'm doing. I'm not gonna like show like blending eyeshadow, for example, like a ton of blending eyeshadow, because I want to get like all the steps that I do into one video in a relatively digestible amount of time, but I'm gonna try to like be as succinct and thorough as I possibly can. Okay, so first for priming, a little bit extra, I will admit, but I typically go in first with a mattifying primer. If I'm going to be wearing my makeup for any amount of time. This is the L'Oreal Infallible Matte Lock Mattifying Primer. It's a good drugstore option. It's not necessarily like my favorite ever, but it works. And I just put this in, basically like focus this in my T-zone. And then I will go in with a primer that's like a little bit more hydrating or grippy or something like that. I'm going to use today this little sample of the Milk Makeup Hydro Grip Primer, but I do find that I really like the way my makeup goes on. I like the way my skin looks when I use a primer that's more hydrating and kind of like more skin prepping. So I like to use like the combination of a mattifying primer because I am quite oily, and then something that's going to hydrate my skin a little bit more. And then, not always, but most of the time, I will go in with some sort of glow booster because I like to add like a little bit of glow to my base, but I don't necessarily want to be like dewy, just glowy. So today I'm going to use this e.l.f. Halo Glow Liquid Filter. I use the shade Fair, and I'm just going to put this all over my face. You can just put this on the high points as well, because this product especially is really quite shiny, but I'm kind of into it. And then I'll just blend this out with my fingers. You can also mix this into your foundation, but I kind of like just putting it all over my face underneath my base. And then for foundation, I'm going to use the Maybelline Matte and Poreless foundation. I have the shade 102 Fair Porcelain. I like to do my foundation with a brush first. This is the e.l.f. Buffing Foundation Brush. It's honestly my favorite foundation brush. It just blends makeup in so beautifully, and it's really affordable as well. So there's really nothing much to this step other than blending my foundation in. I like to just honestly do kind of one thin layer of foundation. I don't really like build it up a ton or anything. I just like to have, you know, one like relatively thin base and just really buff it in. And if I need any extra coverage or anything after, I will use concealer for that. And then once I've applied my foundation, I'll go in with my sponge and just bounce this over my face just to get rid of any like potential brush strokes or excess product or anything. But I do like to initially apply my foundation with a brush. And then now I like to let my foundation kind of like sit and settle into my face for a while. I've done this, I think I started doing this when I like was first watching like Pixie Woo way back in the day. But I really just feel like it, you know, it meshes with my oils a little bit more. And I just prefer the way that my base looks when I let my foundation kind of settle in. So now at this point I will go in and do my brows. I have been doing soap brows for a couple of years now. I honestly just have a clear bar of soap, and this is a spray bottle filled with water. So I'll just spray it directly into this bar of soap and take a little spoolie and just like rub it around in there. and just brush my brows up. I don't slick them to my skin like I used to do. I kind of just basically use this as like a holding, like a brow gel kind of. There are other products that do similar things to this. I honestly just really prefer soap. But yeah, I just pretty much just like run it through. Sometimes the tail of my brows will just slightly push up, but I don't necessarily like slick them back anymore. Because this is essentially just soap and water, I like to let them set a little bit just so they're not like wet or anything when I'm putting brow product through them. So now I will put some lip balm on. Right now I'm using the Summer Fridays Lip Butter Balm. This is just the clear one, but a lip balm in most ways is a lip balm. This is just a bougie one, but it is so nice. It's so nice. At this point as well, I will also take like a face cloth or a little thingy like this and wet it with just some water from that same spray bottle. Seems kind of weird, but I just go like very on the underneath my brows with this just to get rid of any like soap residue that might be there, because I do like blend shadow right up to my brows. I find it just helps like the blend a little bit, be a little bit cleaner. Kind of random, but I just do it. And then I'll put eye primer on. Right now I'm using the Fenty Beauty Pro Filter Amplifying Eye Primer. And I apply this. And then I also put this underneath my eyes as well, because I do put a lot of shadow under my eyes. And then again, seems kind of random, but because I prefer to do shadow, like my top lid shadow, before I do like my concealer and stuff, while I'm letting my foundation kind of settle into my face, I like to conceal like right in the inner part of my eyes. This is just Maybelline Fit Me. Just because sometimes I feel like I can't get concealer like right up in there if I already have shadow on. So I like to just kind of blend a little bit of concealer there before I start with my shadow. And I will blend it in using this Real Techniques Deluxe Crease Brush. But any brush will do, or your fingers or a sponge. Please ignore my washing machine that makes our entire apartment shake. And then at this point I will fill in my brows. My tried and true is the NYX Lift and Snatch Brow Tint Pen. I use the shade Auburn, and I just essentially fill my brows in with like little brow strokes. Okay, so I'm just going to use a random palette. I really feel like using the Odin's Eye and the Fancy Face Hummingbird palette. So I think I'm going to do something kind of like blue-ish, but this basically follows very similar steps that I do when I do my makeup on a regular basis. I just feel like it goes with my eye shape, and I just like the way it looks if I'm not doing something like intentionally, like a specific look. It's kind of just what I do on like an everyday basis. I'm gonna start, typically I start with my shadows from dark or lightest to darkest. So I'm gonna start with the shade Clear Blue, which is this really light blue, kind of as my first blending shade. And I'm just going to blend this all the way through my crease, and I take this and really buff it basically all the way like underneath my brow. I feel like building up kind of like a lightish shade just helps with blending. I find it easier to blend lightest to darkest, especially on an everyday basis when I'm not going for necessarily super like specific look per se. So yeah, this is just basically what I do with kind of like my first initial blending shade. And now I will use typically like a mid-tone shade, so I'm going to use Lagoon, which is honestly like a beautiful blue. I used this the other day. I forgot how nice of a blue this is. And so typically I like to take my shadow and place it in the outer corner, or like the outer like half, I guess, kind of my eye, and then basically like pat this down. I feel like this is just what kind of like flatters my eye shape the best because I do have such hooded eyes. I like to just try to create some structure to them. And then I will take this and like slightly wing it out. And then basically blend it all the way through my crease. By the way, for my transition shade, I used a Morphe M441, and this is a random brush from Beauty Bay. But honestly, my favorite crease brush of all time is the Blend Bunny B5. It's like the perfect size and shape. I love it. And then I bring this like kind of straight forward, basically all the way up to my nose, because I'll fill like this part of my lid in with shadow. And then when I have that placed down as best as I, want it, I will take a totally clean fluffy brush. This, I do not know what it is or where it's from. And I'll just blend the edges till the blend is like pretty decent. I like to just do this in between kind of like every step because I feel like it just helps with blending as you go. And then I'll also take the brush that I used the first shade on, no additional product, and just lightly blend this over the edge as well. This doesn't do like a ton, but I just feel like it also helps with the blend. And now I will go in with this deepest shade. So I'm going to take the shade Star Apple from this palette. It's a darker purple. I hope I am in the middle. This, by the way, is a Sigma E42. It's such a good crease brush for like darker shades or detail work. It's so good. And I basically will just take this everywhere, like again on the outer corner and through the crease, just to build a little bit more depth. But I won't blend it up as high as I did with Lagoon. Again, just following the shape that I have created. And then once I have this darkest shade placed down where I want it and like the intensity that I want it, I'll take the same brush that I took Lagoon on, the mid-tone shade, and blend the edges with this brush. I find that this helps keep the, like, I guess opacity and like color saturation of the mid-tone shade rather than going in first and blending completely with a totally clean brush. I try to do this pretty lightly. Like, I don't want to like completely remove the deepest shade. I just want to blend the edges out into the mid-tone shade. And then I might go over very gently with the totally clean brush. And then once again with the brush that I used the lightest shade on. But again, this isn't going to do like a whole ton of a lot, but just kind of help blending as we go. Okay. So now that's where I want my crease. I have my crease where I want it pretty much. I'm going to go with a shimmer all over my lid. First, I'm going to use the NYX glitter primer. Basically just squeeze a little bit of this onto the brush and just put this all over where I want the shimmer to go. I take this a little bit up into my crease as well because I personally want the shimmer to show when I have my eyes open. And I'm going to use the shade Tropics today. So I'll just take that shimmer with the same brush that I used with the glitter primer and just put this all over the lid. Nothing too crazy. And by the way, this brush is an e.l.f. flat eyeshadow brush. Okay, if I'm in a different place, it's because my camera cut off, but we're moving along. So now that the shimmer is laid down, I'll take a little bit more of Lagoon and blend this into the shimmer on the outer corners of my eye, just so there's like a gradation between my crease, the outer corners, and the matte and shimmer shades. And then also take like a tiny, tiny touch of Lagoon and run this very lightly over the front of my crease. And then take a little bit of Star Apple, the deepest purple, and also use this to deepen my outer corners. And then again, take a very small amount of that and run this over my crease, the front part of my crease, and then also use this slightly to blend the shimmer out because I don't want it to be like a cut crease. I don't want it to be like super, super harsh. Basically now I'm just kind of looking to see if there are any harsh edges. I want this to be a really blendy look. So kind of blending wherever I feel like I might need it. Now at this point I will take, this is a Sigma E33. It's like a really small fluffy blending brush. And I'll take the lightest shade that I use, the clear blue shade, and very lightly run this over the edge of my crease just to make sure everything's, again, super, super blended. Like a final kind of step. And then now that all the blending's done, I'm going to take the shimmer, so the Tropics shade on my finger, and intensify this on my lid. I just feel like this really makes every shimmer just have like a little bit of an extra punch. I like to lay it down initially with the brush, but then I like to like kind of as a final step go in and intensify it or blend it out or whatever with my finger. So now essentially my top shadow is done, and what I like to do is I will take like a same thing, like a little round or face cloth or whatever, and I'll take some like micellar water. You could use just regular water as well, and I will clean up the edges of my shadow. You could do this with a makeup wipe as well. I just don't typically. Okay, so this wasn't the best shape ever. I don't of course, but it's pretty easy to fix once you do your lower lash line. But I don't want it to be like so downturned, you know, I want it to be like a little bit more angled up. You could also do this with concealer. This is just what I generally do. I mean, try, I guess. I mean, they both suck. So there you go. They suck equally. They're similar shapes. Normally, I don't know, something like that. It's not going to be exactly precise, but I just want it, yeah, just to clean up all the like shadow that makes my eyes look a little bit droopy. Some days goes better than others, but alas, I digress. Now I will go in with concealer now that my foundation is kind of like merged into my skin a little bit more. I don't know if you are going to be able to see that, but I feel like I can see a difference. Today I'm going to use the NYX Bare With Me Concealer Serum in the shade Fair. And so, like everyone else, I put it right like in the inner like hollows of my eyes, my concealer, and then I'll also just put it here, especially now that I've like removed some of that foundation on the corners of my eyes, and then like around my nose and on my chin. And then I like to blend my concealer in with a sponge. And then I'll also put that concealer, like I have a lot of like hyperpigmentation, acne scarring, things like that. So I won't put it in like a super, not in a precise way. I'll just kind of put it, the concealer on wherever I feel like pimples or scarring or whatever is showing through my base. Yeah, just because some days are worse than others, some times are worse than others. Right now, it's not doing great, but it is what it is. And then just again blend it out with a sponge. Just because I could do like spot concealing, but I like to have, there's just like wider areas of my face that I feel like need covering. And that would take me just so long to do like individual spot concealing for. And then I also have scarring on my jawline, so I put a little bit of concealer there as well. And then I will go in with spot concealing depending on the concealer or the state of my skin. Sometimes I don't always need this, but I always use the NARS Soft Matte Complete Concealer in the shade Chantilly. And if there are any like specific blemishes that I feel like are showing through, I'll conceal them. Maybe under my eyes a little bit. This concealer is a little bit lighter in coverage, so sometimes I will do that as well. Some people don't cover their blemishes, so obviously, like, if you don't want to cover your blemishes, don't. This is just what I do if I'm wearing a full face of makeup, because why wouldn't I, in my opinion? I'm pretty at peace with my acne. I've had it my entire life, basically, or post-puberty life, so I'm not like super bothered by it. But if I'm doing like full glam, personally, my preference is to cover up my acne as much as I can, but again, to your own preference. And now I will go in with my cheek cream product. So contour, I prefer to do. Some people, again, don't contour. I have a chubby square face, so I love to contour, but again, don't contour if you don't feel like you want to. I will go back and forth depending how I feel or what products I have between cream and powder. Right now I have a cream, the NYX Wonder Stick in Fair, and I'll just take this stick directly on my brush. This is a Real Techniques contour brush. I think the writing is rubbed off, and I will just pounce this basically with my brush, kind of like stipple it into my cheeks in the contour areas, and also like around my, not my temples, like my forehead a little bit. Then I'll also take this on my jaw, which I will blend out because it can look a little bit harsh, and a lot of times I forget to blend it out, but it's what it's. And then I'll also put this on my double chin, to be frank, and a little bit in the end of my nose. And then sometimes I'll take a little bit more of the stick right directly in the hollows of my cheeks and then blend it out. Now I will use a cream bronzer. Right now I'm using the e.l.f. Putty Bronzer in the shade Tan Lines. I really like to layer cream and powder products. I feel like it helps with longevity, and I just really like the effect that it gives. So I put this, because I've contoured, I bronze where, you know, you would naturally bronze on like my cheekbones, my cheeks, whatever, on the sides of my forehead, basically all over my face, to be honest. Also in like the middle upper part of my forehead, and I'll also take this along my nose, like so. And then at this point usually is when I remember that I have to blend out my contour, so I'll just take my foundation brush and just stipple this over my jawline. By the way, the bronzer brush that I use for my bronzer is the Real Techniques blush brush. Now I will go in with cream blush. Today, what do I want to use? I'm actually gonna use, I want to do something kind of like yellowy orange. I think I'm gonna use this e.l.f. monochromatic multi-stick in the shade Glowing Mango. This is not my favorite blush formula, my favorite cream blush formula, but I really like the color. It's like a really light orange, so I use it. But it's not necessarily my favorite ever, but I'm just gonna take this. This is on a Wet n Wild something, I don't know, just an angled cheek brush, I guess. I got it on Amazon, if you're curious, but I'll just take it directly. I'll take it directly from the stick. I always pretty much use my cream blushes in this way, and then I'll put it like pretty high up on the outer parts of my cheek, similar to where I put my bronzer, but I like to try to concentrate it on like the outer kind of region here of my cheeks, and then I'll also bring it onto my temples. Then I'll also take this right kind of in the center of my forehead lightly, and a little bit on my chin to kind of just balance it out, because I do like a lot of blush. And then I'll take whatever blush I'm using on my finger and tap it on my nose. I feel like this just gives me like the best application, because usually the brushes that I use are just too big. So I'll tap it similar to where I placed the bronzer, just on the bridge of my nose and then down the sides. Then I'll also take a little bit and tap this with my finger right kind of at on the highest points of my cheeks here, just to have like the most intensity there. And then if I feel like I need to, I will sometimes go in with my bronzer brush again, but I feel like everything's looking pretty good today. Now, at this point, I will powder my face. So I like to set the center of my face with a loose powder. Just, I feel like it helps control my oil and stuff. So I typically use the Maybelline Fit Me Loose Finishing Powder. It's my favorite. It's affordable. It's like what I always go back to. And I take a sponge with this and put this not all the way under my eyes, but right kind of like by the bridge of my nose, like right on the like inner part of my cheeks, because that's where I have like the most issues with oil. And then on my chin, right in the center, and in the center of my forehead, as well as under my jaw. This just helps again with contouring. I don't feel like it's overly harsh, but this I think is going to be a polarizing step, so you know, if you hate it, you hate it. Don't do it. And then I'll let it sit for a little bit. I don't typically let it sit for a really, really long amount of time. And then I will take a kind of like glowy-ish finishing powder. Typically I use the Hourglass Ambient Lighting Powder and Ethereal Light. But I know there are other ones out there that do similar things. So I'll just take a little bit of that and use that powder to brush away this bake. And then I will use a pressed powder for the rest of my face. This is the Sephora Micro Smooth Multitasking Baked Face Powder in the shade Porcelain. And I will just set my face with this. Not too much, just like relatively lightly, but I just prefer like the ease of a pressed powder to set the rest of my face. You can just loosely dust a loose powder, loosely, gently, whatever, lightly dust a loose powder. It works the same way. I just prefer using a pressed powder, and then I will go back in with whatever finishing powder I'm using and just lightly again tap this over my face. I just feel like it adds again a little bit of glow without making me look too dewy or oily. Now I'm going to take a powder bronzer. Again, I just really like layering creams and powders in thin layers. So this is the NYX California Beamin Bronzer in the shade Free Spirit. It's the one I'm panning. And I'll take a very light amount of this and just put this again over my cheeks where I basically put the initial bronzer. This bronzer is a little bit too deep for me, so I typically like to use as light of a hand as I possibly can. And then I'll also put this on my neck. And then I'll take the smallest amount ever of this and gently dust this over the bottom half of my face, because I do wear a lot of cheek product. So otherwise, if I don't do this, my foundation can look a little bit stark on the bottom half of my face. Sometimes it still does, but I feel like this tones it down a little bit. And then at this point, before I go in with highlight, I will spray my face with a setting spray. This is the e.l.f. Glow Dewy Mist. It's a little bit too glowy, too dewy, too oily for my personal preference, but it's just what I have. I'm over halfway done. I'm just going to finish it. And once this is dried down, I'll go in again with my sponge and just pat over my face to help it kind of like really settle in, especially if it's a dewy spray. This is a must for me. Highlight, now let's see. Let's use the Blend Bunny Noctilucent palette. I'm going to use the shade Apparition. It's a blue. And my favorite highlight brush to use is the Real Techniques setting brush. I feel like it's just the best. So I'll just go on my cheekbones with this. I mean, I feel like highlight is pretty self-explanatory. And then on my temples, you know, in that C shape. And I like to do setting spray before highlight because I feel like it makes my highlight show up better, stick better. Then I'll put a tiny touch of this right above my brow, on my forehead, and then I'll use my finger and put this down the bridge of my nose. I don't personally highlight the tip of my nose, but if you like to do that, do you. And then my Cupid's bow, which looks a bit crazy with colored highlight, but oh well. And then for blush, this is very exciting. I just got this in the mail yesterday. I bought it myself. I sadly don't receive PR from Blend Bunny, but if they're watching this, I love you. I'm going to use a shade from the Blend Bunny Juicy Cheeks face palette, and I want to use the shade Squeeze, this gorgeous light orange. Ugh, I've been waiting to use this. And I will put this everywhere I put my cream blush. So just like in the top half of the outer part of my cheeks, if you know what I'm saying. Oh, this blush is everything. And also I'll bring that onto my temples. And then also, again, a little bit on my forehead and on my chin. And on my nose. So pretty. Oh my god. And I like to do my blush in kind of like my base before I do my lower lash line as my final step, so I can really blend my lower lash line into everything. And I've gone back and forth between doing like my lower lash line darkest to lightest, but typically the way I like to do it is I'll take whatever mid-tone shade I used, so Lagoon, and I will stamp this along my lower lash line. And then I will take, this is just like the ABH brushes that come with their palettes, or used to. I have like 3 of them and I love using them for this, and I'll just blend it out using the little blendy side. But I mean, you could also use the same blending brush you used in your crease for this. Doesn't really matter. And I like a really blendy lower lash line. Like I really like my shadow to be smoked out, but not everyone does, so bear that. Ugh. And sometimes the shape gets away from you, but you just gotta take the L because it's too late. I really have to like focus with my lower lash line or shit like this happens, but whatever. And then I will take a smaller pencil brush. This is a Blend Bunny B3. And use the darkest shade that I used in my crease and deepen my lower lash line, and then give that another little blend. And then in my opinion, this is the most important part, is I will take that first transition shade and then blend the edges out. And I just feel like this fades everything together much better, tones down, you know, the edges a little bit, just blends everything else out, and I feel like this is a very important step. And honestly, while we're here, I also will take that first transition shade and take it right by my nose, where my shadow hits my nose, and blend this slightly out, like blending where the shadow meets my nose, just down onto the bridge of my nose a little bit, just to help it kind of all mesh together. So that is where we left off. And then with every look ever, I will take a matte black, and then a very, very tiny pencil brush. This is a Blend Bunny B2. And I will pack this in the very outer corners of my eyes, just so I get the most depth right in the outer corners. And I'll also put this on the outer part of my bottom lash line as well. Okay, and now to finish my eyeshadow off, I'm going to use this single from Shine by Esty in the shade Twilight. I'm going to spray this. This is just with water though, just because it's a bit flaky, just so it sticks, and just put this on my inner corners. This is a very random flat brush that I do not know what it is or where it's from. I probably stole this from my mom when I was like 15. Then I'll take a really, really small brush and put this on my brow bone. But I just put it like right on the arch of my brow. And then take that same Sigma E33 and just lightly blend so it's not super stark. Then I'll take my brow gel. I like to use a tinted brow gel at the end so no soap residue or anything shows up in my brows. This is the e.l.f. Wow Brow in the shade Neutral Brown. And just gently run over this so it just slightly defines it a little bit more. And then I will take Freck and do some freckles. And then I guess I'll show you all the steps while I'm here. I'm just going to put a black in my waterline and my tight line. This is the e.l.f. Satin Eyeliner Pencil in black. And then when I do winged out shapes like this, I like to do a winged liner. So I'm going to use the NYX Epic Ink Liner in black and just do a little wing. And then really if I'm doing my makeup just for like every day, quote unquote, I don't know, wouldn't put lashes on. It really depends, but today I'm going to. Couldn't tell you what these lashes are. Got them from Amazon. They're just like winged out lashes. They're not super dramatic. I'm okay at applying lashes, but I'm not the best ever. I've just, I think as with anything, you just kind of learn the more you do it. The only real tip I have is like wait until the glue is tacky. Like everyone else says, it seems like it might be harder, but it makes it so much easier. And I like to use the Duo like brush on clear lash glue. And then while I wait for that to dry, at this point I'll use like just a coat of mascara. I'm using the e.l.f. Lash Extending Mascara right now in black, but I don't really like it. So wouldn't recommend. And then I just put my lashes on. I have genuinely no idea whether this is helpful or not. But here we are. And still, to save my life, cannot get my lashes to look even. They're always at different angles between my two eyes. Don't know how to change it. And then finally, for my lips, I'll just take off whatever lip balm I have on. I always get like a little bit of fallout on my upper lip for whatever reason. I don't know why. So try to ignore that. But now my go-to lip when I'm like not filming or just my go-to lip, you get the concept, is always Makeup Forever Artist Color Pencil in Endless Cacao right in the center. Oh, I used this over top of a lipstick yesterday. And then a lighter lip liner. Usually it's ColourPop Ashton, Lippy Pencil in Ashton on the edges. And then I'll fill in like the outer edges, basically, I guess, outer corners of my lips with the lighter lip pencil. I'll typically use whatever cream blush I used on my face, on my lips. This might look a little bit weird because it's metallic. Not metallic, but like shimmery, but it'll be fine. Then I'll put a gloss on top. Honestly, I'll just use this Essence gloss. This is the Shine Wet Look Lip Gloss is just the clear one. It also depends. If I'm going like out, maybe I'll use a lip gloss, or I'll use like kind of a lighter nude liquid lipstick, like the Rimmel one that I use a lot. Honestly, I've been reaching for this Unearthly Cosmetics satin liquid lipstick in Ava a lot, but this is generally pretty safe bet that this is the kind of lip combination that I'm wearing. And then I will just quickly go over my lash band with the liquid liner that I used. And I just did a weird little, of course, I always fuck it up right at the end, but whatever. You won't be able to see it, it's fine. And this is the finished look. This is a pretty like simple look, not like out of the realm of what I typically do for like an everyday look for me. Generally pretty simple with the eyes, but just with, you know, different palettes, different colors, different color combos, whatever. And then otherwise everything is pretty consistent. Hopefully this was helpful because I don't think I've ever gone this in depth with my like routine before. But I really like it. I don't know. It's what works for me and my eye shape, and yeah, hopefully this wasn't too long and I was able to explain everything and make it clear. If you have any questions, please comment down below and ask me. I'm not always the most prompt with responding, but I will eventually respond to you. So just, I have something in my teeth. Just, you know, keep that in mind. But yeah, hopefully this was helpful in some way. Also, I will say, if I'm going somewhere or like doing anything, wearing my makeup, I will always spray my face with hairspray. It will make my makeup last like 10 times longer. And I will do it with every step done, my lips, everything. Once everything in my makeup is done, I'll spray my face with hairspray and it really makes my makeup last. I don't find that it like breaks me out or anything, but do you. May not be for everyone, but if you have trouble with your makeup lasting, try hairspray. It like is A1. So yeah, I will leave you now. Oh, my lashes are not even, but what are you gonna do? I will leave you now and I would love to see you in my next video. Bye.